Welcome back to Kiesel News, everybody. To start today off, we have comments from none other than Wesley Snipes on the current status of the Blade movie. He says, and I quote, "Blade, lordy, lordy, lordy. Folks still looking for the secret sauce. Riding snowmobiles in traffic. Kinda rough. Daywalkers make it look easy, don't they?" So, with this, I like to picture that they just found him at like some party or something for ex-Marvel actors who all shit on the current stuff. And he was probably like 10 drinks deep, and this was the response that he gave. Or maybe he decided to stop slaying vampires and become one, and this is what happens to you after you drink blood. Like, what kind of response is this, man? It's absolutely hilarious, but as for him describing it as kinda rough, yeah, I think that's an understatement there, dude. This is the most trouble a Marvel film has ever been in, I'm pretty sure. But let's be real, he probably just wants to keep the doors open if they ask him to return for Secret Wars, because you know he'd be paid big money for just a small cameo in that. Continuing the Marvel train, we apparently have some very brief gameplay of Spider-Man 3. Now, all this really shows is some web swinging in the city, and that's been in both of the Spider-Man games prior to this, so it's not like it's anything revolutionary, but it doesn't need to be. For one, the game probably just entered development, so they're obviously just going to start by inputting the things that were in previous games. Especially something as fundamental to the series as the web swinging across the city. I mean, you can't have a Spider-Man game without that. So I don't understand why people are mad, calling it repetitive and, oh, they're just doing the same thing over and over again. Like, no, obviously this isn't what the whole game is. That's why it's a leak. We weren't meant to see this. We probably won't even hear of a Spider-Man 3 announcement for 3 years, let alone it coming out in the next 5. However, I do question why someone would even leak this footage in the first place. Like, why would you just leak random swinging gameplay? You're putting your job at risk, all for people to hate you on Twitter. Wow, how ironic. Continuing with Spider-Man, Sean Levi wants to make a Deadpool and Spider-Man crossover film. Now, obviously, this is just what he wants. I mean, a lot of people want a Spider-Man and Deadpool crossover film, but does that mean it's going to happen? No. However, it's very well a possibility, as if you remember the deals with Spider-Man with Sony and Marvel back when that was huge news, I think that was all the way back in like 2019, 2020 at this point, but one of the movies in the deal was another crossover film aside from Infinity War and Endgame, so this is definitely an option. Marvel's kind of missing the sweet spot to do this crossover film, though, as Spider-Man No Way Home and Deadpool 3 are both huge multiverse movies, and they haven't crossed over yet. So assuming Spider-Man won't appear in Deadpool 3, you kind of missed your prime opportunity. Who knows? Maybe Tom Holland won't even be available. Maybe he's just going to say, "Fuck Marvel, I have Uncharted," as Uncharted 2 is confirmed to be in the works. Now, I feel like Uncharted is a video game adaptation that is very much swept under the rug. Like, when you think of video game adaptations, who thinks of Uncharted? I think it's just because it was so average. Like, we're used to video game adaptations either being the best fucking thing you've ever seen, or the absolute worst thing you've ever seen. Like Halo and Fallout competing, for example. Like, Fallout got unanimous praise, Halo got unanimous hate. This just got nothing. So I think that's my advice for Uncharted 2. Either go in and be as faithful to the original game as possible, or just fucking ruin it. That's how you're gonna get your publicity. Next up, YouTube is coming out with community notes now. As you can see by the image, the feature is basically just copy and pasted from Twitter, which is pretty rare. Like, when's the last time YouTube has took a feature from Twitter? You've seen the other way around, but not this. I don't think a feature like this is as needed on a long-form video platform as it is something like Twitter, as you're going to be seeing a lot more posts on Twitter, and it'll thereby increase your chance of getting a spam post or something bad. But with YouTube, I don't think it's as crucial. The only genre of content that I could really see using it to their advantage is commentary YouTubers, as now it'll be easier for them to get accurate research done on topics, and they'll also be able to call out bullshit more easily. Now, people are comparing this feature to YouTube Heroes, as the current idea behind it is to have the audience rate community notes on if they're useful or not. This is similar to YouTube Heroes in that you're leaving something up to the audience, but I feel like the execution here will be very different. I mean, for one, no one's channels are at stake, so if the audience gets something wrong, it's not gonna make the channel fucking disintegrate into the abyss. So there's a lot more room for error. I know I'd rather leave if notes were useful up to the community, as opposed to leaving it up to YouTube, as then we'd have to go through a whole appeal system to get a note removed, and it would just take an unnecessarily long amount of time. Next up, Australian authorities apparently used $100 million worth of taxpayer money in developing Furiosa. I think the primary issue with this is just that they didn't say so beforehand. I mean, everyone needs to know where their tax dollars are going. I'm surprised that's not a requirement everywhere in the world. I mean, you're paying taxes. You have to know where they're ending up. Hell, it's usually a primary voting point for a lot of politicians' campaigns, like, hey, we're going to spend your tax dollars like this. Regardless, though, I don't think this is a hot take at all, but I don't think tax dollars should be going to movies. Tax dollars should go to things that benefit every single member of a population, more or less. That's why you think of things like dental care, or medical care, or even schools, because at the end of the day, schools are benefiting even people who aren't in school, as it's getting the next generation ready to take over for when they're gone, right? But a movie isn't benefiting everybody, because not everybody is going to go see Furiosa. I mean, it sure seems like everybody has, but I digress. Dave Filoni is not against the idea of an R-rated Star Wars project, although he does admit that Star Wars is for kids, first and foremost, so you wouldn't really want to alienate that audience, right? But I think you could do so for one project. If you're making projects like Young Jedi Adventures that are exclusively aimed at the younger part of your audience, why not make some for your older audience as well? It's not like Star Wars doesn't have adult fans. It's probably, next to Disney, one of the fan bases with the most diverse ages and fans. It could also just give all the other projects more of an audience as well, as you would have people coming in who originally thought Star Wars was too childish, just because they see that R-rated sign and automatically think, oh, it must be better and more mature then. You could also just do an R-rated Star Wars Halloween theme project, as a lot of parents seem more open to take their kids to R-rated movies if it's Halloween season, right? So boom, just capitalize on the Halloween season and you'd have the same audience. Probably even more. The US is now advocating to put warning labels on social media sites of how they can affect teenagers' mental health. This makes no sense to me. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a bad thing by any means. It's not going to do any harm to have these warning labels. But what benefit is it really going to do either? Everyone is already aware of the terrible effects social media can have on teens, and yet teens and adults still use social media anyway. And they compare it to tobacco. It's the same thing there. People are aware of the risks of tobacco, they still do it anyway. People are aware of the risks of drinking, they still do it anyway. People are aware of the risks of doing, like, parkour stunts, they do it anyway, because they want to. At the end of the day, all this would accomplish is wasting the time of a few software engineers. So, you know what, let's just save them the time and not implement this shit. Adobe is being sued. How the fuck are you gonna edit your cringy 2008 school projects now? Windows Movie Maker? But in all seriousness, the reasoning for Adobe being sued is due to their subscription. Now, the first part seems justified to me, as it's about them not making it clear that customers were paying for a whole year, and not informing people that it costs money to cancel early, and they would just charge them anyway. That shit's obviously wrong, so they should be sued for that. But the whole point about them making it difficult to cancel, I don't think that's sue-worthy. I mean, yeah, you have to navigate through multiple screens and enter your password multiple times, but a lot of websites do that, and they're not getting sued. I guess it's just a case of them being like, okay, you did one bad thing, we were going to let it slide, but now that you did two bad things, we're going to pretend that we were always against the first one as well. Tennessee has passed a bill that allows the death penalty for child rapists. Now, you'd usually expect something crazy like this to come out of Florida, but no, Tennessee. Now, I just recently watched the movie Dead Man Walking as well as The Green Mile, and those deal heavily with the death penalty. So I have a lot of thoughts on this, actually. The death penalty is fully illegal where I live in Canada, but I think it should be legal, especially for monsters like child rapists, man. The primary argument against the death penalty is that, what if you get the wrong person and then you just killed an innocent person? But that's why you just wait for a confession. If the person doesn't confess, then just don't rush to the death penalty. Sure, there is flaws in that logic, I will admit, as someone could just watch this video, and then let's say this policy actually was enacted, and they could just be like, oh, well, I guess I wouldn't get the death penalty if I didn't confess, so I won't confess. But a solution like that is the only way you can be absolutely certain you're not punishing innocents. Hell, even video proof might not be a viable solution in the future, especially with AI. Lastly for today, we have official confirmation of a Nintendo Direct for tomorrow. Now, it is not going to focus on the Switch 2, it's not going to reveal the Switch 2, only Switch games coming this year. But it's good to know that we are going to be getting some new content this year. We had nothing on the docket, really. Now, depending on if there's a whole bunch of exciting announcements, I'll either do a Kiesel News tomorrow focusing on all the announcements, or I'll do a full-on video like I did for Summer Games Fest, if I can get a full video out of it. But for today, I'm just going to go over a few of my brief predictions. I don't really have a whole lot, especially for major first-party titles, as I think we're primarily done with them. But I have seen people mention a Zelda game of some kind, whether that's a remake, like was rumored, of Ocarina of Time, or Majora's Mask, and I could definitely see that happening. Or I've seen people like Arlo mention a potential 2D Zelda. I could also see that happening. But two things that I'm really hoping for is either Kodaka's new game that he's working on, presumably with Spike Chunsoft, as Spike Chunsoft doesn't really have much coming out right now, aside from like one beach anime game of some kind. And the other game is Ghostcraft by Level 5, which appears to either be a spiritual successor to Yokai Watch or a full-on sequel. And if Yokai Watch actually comes back, I will lose my shit. It's a lot more than just a Pokemon knockoff, guys. I have a lot of fond memories with the series. I did fall off around when everybody else did, which was after the third game, pretty much. But that's just because the third game took so long to get localized to the West after the game's initial boom in the West. I think the game could really take off if it is different enough from Yokai Watch while also having some of the same elements. So not something as radically different as like that Y School Gakukin thing was that was Japanese exclusive, but something in between there, I think. And I was also just thinking, we could get an Animal Crossing spin-off now. I think it'd be the perfect time with the Lego sets just coming out, and it'd be a small enough title for the end of the Switch's lifetime. So maybe, just maybe, as for Pokemon, I would normally say no, as they keep all their announcements for presents, but recently, especially with Detective Pikachu Returns and even Scarlet and Violet, they have been making some appearances in directs, and it's been a very long time. It's been since Pokemon Day that we heard anything about Legends ZA. So even just a quick mention, or even an announcement of the next Pokemon direct or presentation, I think is definitely possible. Although ZA might still be too far out if it's releasing 2025. Now, as for my last prediction, I'm going to go with something that's very, very, very unlikely and a huge wild card. But Sakurai did just put out a tweet, I believe it was yesterday, that the final video for his Sakurai Plays Games channel is coming out soon. This could mean that either one, he's out of extra time to work on the channel because he's working on the next Smash Bros, or B, I guess two, not B, but it could mean that he is going to unveil the next Smash Bros game as the final video on the channel in some form of announcement. So what if we get a Smash 7 announcement tomorrow, guys? What if it happens? They could throw one announcement in for the Switch, two at the end, don't you think? But nah, that's probably too ambitious. Instead, we're just gonna be getting Garden of Banban news for 40 minutes.